Whatever age you may be, there are few things better than getting together with the homies and doing something you all love. For a lot of us, that entails showcasing which of you in the friend group is superior at video games. There's just something about individuals that are at a similar skill level that brings out both the best and worst in us. In a world where LAN parties have almost been entirely replaced by online gaming though, the connections built by these types of get-togethers is almost lost. Ironically, this has gone hand in hand with how Sonic games approach implementing multiplayer modes. We've gone from having a fully realized and honestly fire Mario Party copy, to racers that are serviceable but further away from their potential than the games before it. Let's explore the multiplayer modes in Sonic and if any of them are worth trying out. Starting off the races, we have Sonic 2 and S3&K that introduce the idea of racing against your friends in a bite-sized manner. Sonic 2 sees you racing in 3 distinct zones from the single player and a special stage should the scores from the previous endeavors end in a tie. The full levels being here make for quite a bit of replayability in my opinion. Emerald Hill, Casino Night, and Mystic Cave all offer enough difference in terms of level design and structure to go a few rounds without getting bored. There are also these exclusive item boxes that will either switch players' positions or damage whoever broke them respectively. I will say that S3&K does feel like a bit of a backpedal in my eyes due to the shorter course length and how jagged every bit of this feels, but it's a nice addition to a game that had a larger emphasis on story and pseudo cutscene relevance. In both of these games, should you have a friend and second controller plugged in, a co-op story of sorts can take place too. Showing some quick love to Knuckles' Chaotix, this game also has a co-op story I just found out. According to Reddit, you have to complete the tutorial first in order to activate it, but once you do, reload your save file and the game will then give you the option to begin with a second controller plugged in. For a game that requires pretty heavy cooperation, I'm pleasantly surprised. One day I'll get around to Knuckles' Chaotix and may even play it with a friend. Anywho, since we're covering spin-offs, during the 90s there was this really obscure multiplayer game called Sonic R, released for the Sega Saturn, or if you're like me, the Sonic Gems collection later on for the GameCube. In all seriousness though, I've never heard anyone clamor about the versus mode here. I think I've played it with a family member perhaps once or twice, but Sonic R is primarily a single player experience for most folks, but it does a pretty good job at offering variety. Multiple stages, unlockable characters, the whole nine. Then we have Sonic the Fighters, which is frankly in the same position from what I've understood. Nice little arcade game that has a dedicated community that sets up small tournaments now and then, but I wonder if that was the case back when it was released as well. Now that the 90s have come and gone though, the turn of the century brought with it what most people probably know couch play Sonic for. The third 3D Sonic game to have a versus mode was Sonic Shuffle. Sonic Shuffle is the first, but not the last, Mario Party clone that we'll look at today. Unfortunately, I can't form my own opinion on the matter yet since I haven't had the chance to play the game, but from what I understand, it's a hit or miss. Some of the minigames are goated while others lack finesse, and the story is just, okay. Considering it's the first and only Sonic game to have a multiplayer mode that uses the SA1 character models, I'll give it the flowers it deserves. To me, SA2's multiplayer is a mode that does the concept justice by all definitions. Well, to be specific, SA2 Battles versus mode is what I'm referring to. More characters available to both sides, additional stages, and types of modes to play. This game tests your knowledge of the single-player versions of these maps and asks that you utilize it to your strengths. With the different levels being added in for each of the game mode types, you could visit anywhere from only half of a level to the entirety of one, and have some new locations to dip your toes into. Do your speedrun strats for completing City Escape in story mode work just as well in 2-player? What about that damage boost location to get through a wall in Aquatic Mine? It's all up to how you and whoever you're playing against can adapt. Throw on some special moves by collecting rings, a kart racer, and telling your friends to bring their memory card so you can compete to see who raises their child the best. You now have a certified time sink for a pizza-filled Friday night, ladies and gentlemen. This game does ask a lot from the people that haven't played it on their own though, but compared to these next entries, it's like taking candy from a baby. Which is fine by me. The GPA set of Sonic games, Advances 1, 2, and 3, Battle, and Pinball Party all require a little device called a link cable. For anyone not in the know-how, before the advent of IR connections a la Pokemon, or connecting to a friend's device via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, the way you play these games on the go with your group was to have a physical cable between you all. This could either be a singular direct person-to-person connection, or if you had 4 homies and the game had the ability to do so, you'd have to get a 4-way connector. I just want to ask, did anyone legitimately have these and get to use them? I never had the money to get them, but even if I had it, I couldn't find the damn things in the first place. This was before Amazon and the conventional delivery services that we have today, so not being able to play the games together was always a sore point for my friends and I growing up. Anyway, these 4 games all saw some variation of racing against each other, trying to achieve the highest score, or in the case of Peak, battling it out for supremacy amongst one another. I can't imagine that these were solid offerings if you had a similarly aged family member that possessed the many necessary components, but that experience is lost to time. Sonic Heroes is the next contender, and I don't like the versus mode here that much, but not for the reason that you think. Considering you need almost all the emblems in order to unlock every mode is insane. Here's why. The quick race mode sees you completing on stages that take about 30 seconds is a good idea so that one can stay. However, action race shouldn't be a thing, and that's because expert race exists. The action races see you go through roughly about half of the stage, same as SA2 in some cases, but the characters and heroes move way faster than the former. Bobsled race can stay since it's the obligatory kart racing mode. Ring race is put together a bit poor in my opinion and incentivizes spamming, and battle mode in this case is just a matter of playing quick draw in the Wild West. If they were to structure this like the following, we'd have a goldmine on our hands. Even longer stage length with expert races and perhaps non-broken team-specific shortcuts, quick race being for those bite-sized showcases of who understands their team-specific abilities and game mechanics better, bobsled race sticking around to be the mindless fun option, and having the special stage versus mode being a hidden option in case of a tie during the expert and quick races like it was back in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, however, and it's miles better than what comes right after it. Shadow the Hedgehog's multiplayer is not good. I'm not going to say that it's not good at all, but it's for sure not the best that it could be. Take everything I said about the quick and expert races from Heroes and apply it to this game, which would make it a lot better than what was given. The versus shooting turns into a spam fest, and while fun, it gets tiring very quickly. Why this had to be the first 3D game not to offer any variation in its versus mode is beyond me, but such is life. If they made things so it played out as a race to either the goal ring or who could destroy more enemies first, we'd be having a different conversation. There could have been more exploration on the Shadow androids having a slight advantage in maps with a lot of enemies, since you have a weapon attached to your arm and don't need to pick up one, and the organics getting an advantage by using vehicles to access shortcuts. Those, or literally anything else, but luckily they learned from their mistakes for these next few games. Sonic Rush and Rush Adventure, Sonic Rivals and Rivals 2, and Sonic 06 all go back to the tradition of trying to be the fastest and reaching the goal. Rivals 1 and 2 are the outliers here slightly because you have the elemental items that can quickly turn the tide of battle depending on what position you're in. Way ahead of your opponent in first, here's a shield or landmine of sorts to make sure that it stays that way. Close second with the race about to end, take an offensive version of the same items that will result in different effects. We also can't forget about the star item that taps into the true potential of your racer of choice. The stages are decently long and have specific gimmicks that are built to keep players on their toes too. As for the Rush games in 06, these are slightly less chaotic races that see a simple head-to-head match for who can reach the goal first. In most cases, for all of these games, the entire stage from what options are available are traversed, with the only exception being the Mach Speed sections in 06. Speaking of that game, there is both a tag and a battle mode, but the only difference is working to overcome the added stage obstacles or not. I also have to add in that Sonic 2006's multiplayer becomes more fun once you beat the game. If you have only beaten Sonic's story and have all of his upgrades, the other two Hedgehogs feel abysmal to play as, since the ability progression in versus mode is tied to story mode. With all that being noted down though, now we can get into the real meat and potatoes. Sonic and the Secret Rings, and Sonic and the Black Knight. We will get to you later. Let me start by saying that I avoided Secret Rings multiplayer like the plague as a child because of how the main game was just too fun for me. However, once I realized that everything under the hood here was worth it, that's all she wrote. I spent countless hours getting all of the Fire Souls required to unlock the extra characters, Cream, Shadow, Silver, and Blaze, and extra minigames that came along with them as well. Secret Rings is not the easiest game to control and has its fair share of issues, so if you want to stick with the base roster of 4 characters and 27 minigames, I don't blame you. I'd still recommend going for some of the Fire Souls though, for being honest. Doing so unlocks extra boards, as I'll call them, and these spice up the multiplayer with goals that entice you to do better in minigames. Everything from strategically bidding on carpets, a gamble of treasure chest where if you place in first, you can open as many as you want, but you need to be careful about greed screwing you over. You have a tournament of power thing going on here. a dedicated board game where you need to find 3 specified treasures first, and a more streamlined and explicit version of Mario Party where your placement and minigames determine how far up you move. The party mode in Secret Rings is a certified banger, but like Heroes, a decent chunk of the content is behind a collectible wall that most won't get to experience. I doubt we'll ever see an official Secret Rings remaster, but if we do, it'd be nice to see this mode again. I wish I could say the same for Black Knight. This game falls under the same category as S3 and K, where it's a decent addition to a story and world-driven game, but coming hot off the heels of a party mode in Secret Rings is disappointing. It's just the same couple of battle arenas with slight twists that don't add much for replayability in my opinion. Another issue I have with it is, if all of these characters already have models in-game with corresponding weapons, why couldn't we have gotten some of them playable in single player? Jet, Silver, and Amy all would have been perfect additions to expand the playtime, but maybe that's just me. There are just a few more lights at the end of the tunnel, but they shift in both quality and quantity are all about to change. Sonic Colors actually starts us off pretty strong despite the foreboding I just gave everyone. The multiplayer here sees you go through original levels with virtual Sonics in order to get the Chaos Emeralds at the end of each third act. Providing a decent feedback loop, it goes something along the lines of, you collect some red star rings in single player, which unlocks more multiplayer levels that you can play solo or with friends, and completing all of the multiplayer levels allows for supersonic use in single player stages. For as easy as a game of Sonic Colors is, it's chock full of varying reasons to keep you coming back, and I will admit that it's fun. Skipping on over to Lost World, there is the return of Virtual Sonic, and you can traverse through remixed single player levels to see who gets to the goal first. In addition, I just found out that you can have an RC vehicle assist Sonic in the story mode, and even unlock additional colors for it. Pretty neat. Now, we have Sonic 4 Episode 2, and this may cause some confusion, but I think this is Sonic co-op done correctly. Obviously, there were hardware limitations back in the Genesis days, but getting Tails to you was a chore unless you knew the trick of looking up in order to spawn him. Here, there are buttons that can pull either character to one another and allow for quicker team actions like flying. Of course, Tails as a character having a bit more agency can cause some issues though. Just make sure you're playing with someone who isn't a troll. Sonic Boom is not good. Sonic Boom's multiplayer is also not good. Why anyone would subject a good friend of theirs to playing this game is unknown to me, but this being the last multiplayer game for Sonic we got for 3 years before Mania put a sour taste in everyone's mouth, I'm sure. Speaking of Mania, it's the usual fare of a competition mode and co-op in the case that you're Sonic with Tails. What differs here though is that with the Plus expansion you can now play 4-player competitive mode through a variety of main stages from the story mode, and I feel as though this does the classic formula the justice it deserves. The last multiplayer Sonic game we got was Sonic Superstars, and although I have the game, I've yet to play it for reasons I'll get to in a bit. From what I've heard, Superstars co-op is just kinda okay. There's an argument that Sonic wasn't built for 4-person co-op, but I beg to differ since it was just implemented poorly. I feel as though the game could have been separated into 4 screens for the main parts of the stage, and then for those set pieces like in Bridge Island Zone or the bosses, combine every individual section into one. This way there's no need to worry about not being able to see yourself and being yoinked next to whoever is in the lead. Would this slow down the gameplay at certain points? Well, yes. But it's much better than trying to coordinate everyone moving at the same pace when Sonic's whole thing is his friends having unique traversal abilities. And that's it. Believe it or not, that is every instance of multiplayer in Sonic games. You may notice that I forewent mentioning side games like the Riders series, All-Star Racing series, crossover games, etc., but those are built from the ground up to have multiplayer. As we can see, there was once a time where versus modes and the like were thrown into these games willy-nilly, and I miss it. Having to wait for a dedicated multiplayer game starring Sonic and friends breaks my heart a bit, honestly. I'm sure Crossworlds and Rumble will be great additions to the numerous player catalog, and I'm extremely excited for both, especially Crossworlds. I just wish that we got the innovative modes that, although were tacked on at times and absolutely goated at others, gave us a reason to continuously come back to the games we love. The introduction of leaderboards as this competitive incentive hasn't filled the void I currently have, but I guess it'll suffice for now. Hopefully, the bad reviews of Superstars' multiplayer hasn't soured Sonic Team's drive to go back and have versus and co-op modes. Before I make the special announcement I mentioned earlier, I wanted to ask all of you, what does your ideal Sonic multiplayer experience look like? A party mode like Secret Rings, a foot race like SA2, or something cooperative like the classic style games and Superstars? In addition, what Sonic game has your favorite multiplayer mode? Now for that special announcement. I held a short poll that detailed a rough draft of what my streaming schedule will look like. I changed some things around, but for anyone that missed it, I'll be doing 3 to 4 hour stream sessions on both Twitch and YouTube Thursday through Saturday starting at 12 p.m. PST. Thursdays will be story-driven games in my backlog, and I'll host a poll before the first stream to dictate which one we start off with. Fridays are going to be Fanatic Fridays, where I'll play some official and unofficial Sonic games that I've either played before or not to chill and just have a good time. Finally, Saturdays will be SmackDown Saturdays, where it'll be open invitations to come and play some custom matches in things like Marvel Rivals, Tekken 8, Sonic Riders DX, and a bunch more depending on the vibe of the day. I know that Marvel Rivals is the huge thing right now and offers 12 people playing at one time, so we'll probably start off with that one for a bit. Memberships have also been opened up, and starting with $1 a month, you get access to everything on screen. The early access to new videos means that you will be able to watch whatever the video of the week is the moment I upload it to YouTube, which is typically at some point Wednesday night. Anyone who partakes in the IDW Enjoyers for $5 a month will be entered into a spin wheel, where applicable, for a chance at getting the first round of matchmaking during Saturday SmackDown, along with any updates I'll have about the video of the week. And for those who really love the work that I'm doing here, I've created the Archie Purist tier for $10 a month. You'll have a guaranteed and permanent spot for Saturday SmackDown to start off with, but as I come up with even more exclusive perks, you'll be the first to get them. The very first stream will start next Friday and will tackle Sonic Unleashed Recompiled. I'd like to say a quick thank you to everyone that's been on this journey with me so far, and the support you've shown me has allowed some amazing growth to happen. Being one of the greats is my ultimate goal, but I am nowhere close to that without the assistance of you all. Here's to 2,500 strong and another 2,500 soon enough. Catch you all in the next one.